joy is such an out of control experience. You can't direct it. You can't conjure it. All you can do is like let it bubble up and do its thing. So when I think about how much I love this, it feels scary.
ADHD Rewired, episode 389. This is the podcast for those of us with really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. I'm Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by training and a coach by design. I'm your host and I have ADHD. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community. We are wired for connection and you are not alone. Go to ADHDrewired.com to learn how you can join us in our free secret Facebook group. Get additional resources for every episode, including links to any resources we mention on today's show. You can support us on Patreon, sign up for our email newsletter. You can request podcast postcards to distribute to your clients and support groups, and you can learn all about our intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups. You can do all of this at our website, ADHDrewired.com. We know that starting is the hardest part, so let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. Today's guest is Coach Roxie Martin. Roxie is a certified life coach, currently coaching her second season of ADHD Rewired coaching and accountability groups. She has 35 years of research experience in what it's like to be an adult with ADHD and a lifetime of hard-won wisdom to share. She has a colorful and diverse background that allows her to deeply relate and connect with almost anyone. She has been a ministry leader, a wife, a mom, a hairstylist, and a mentor. She is compassionate, encouraging, and has a finely tuned bullshit meter that helps cut quickly through the fluff and get right to the good stuff. Roxie, I am so thrilled to have you on the podcast today.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
You know, it's of no surprise that sometimes we do things way out of order. So a couple of years ago, I think it was, when so you were first as a member of our coaching groups in 2017, maybe?
Yeah, I don't remember the year. I just remember it was season 13, maybe 3 years ago, because my daughter was getting married. So I'm thinking 3 years ago.
And then you came to be one of our peer mentors, or we call admin. Mm-hmm. And I think it wasn't that long into that work where I kind of knew that you had something special. And, where, there are certain people I think that we meet that it's remarkable when you sort of learn that they are coming at sort of the way they're conversing and asking questions in a way that is just intuitive and from the heart, and in a way that it was so skilled that we were talking about, you wanted to go back to school, and I was encouraging you to look at coaching, and you did finally do that. And I was so happy that you did, because you were one of the very first people who I truly felt, I'm like, I want Roxie coaching my groups. Like this, like, how to ask good questions that are not just like academically good questions, but like that is felt in that sort of heart center way. As your kind of intro said, like your bullshit meter, it's like you have the way to call someone out on their shit and feel like they're like getting a big hug at the very same time. And that, I'm telling you, that is not an easy thing to do.
Thank you.
Do you think you've always kind of had that innately in you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it feels weird to say that, because there's a part of me that's like, is that like that? Like,
Yeah, no.
My fear is like, oh, that sounds really cocky, but that does I don't know. Yes, feels like the honest answer, but it also feels awkward.
Let's go with that, and I totally get that, because it's I think I've talked to you and before about the like when I went to grad school for social work. They kind of, it's almost like, I don't want to say they beat the intuition out of you, but like they want you to go, everything's evidence-based, you're doing all like, and it does, it kind of like you sort of like lose your
yeah.
You learn not to trust your intuition. And I think one of the best things that I think I've done as first as a clinician, then in my coaching, is like coming back to really not just listening to, but amplifying my intuition. Like not forgetting all the other stuff,
right?
But like not letting that be the thing that drives how I show up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. And I just see the way you do that and the way you mirror what you see and ask really, really good questions. I think even our voice has a song. And I think the song of your voice has such a non-judgmental, like an honestly caring, like you truly, genuinely care. I don't think I've ever had a conversation with you, Roxie, where I felt like you were calling it in for even a second. So thank you.
You're welcome.
So I started this saying that we kind of do things out of order.
Yeah.
My vision for you to do coaching groups with us was, let's first get you to start a podcast, get people to know you because they're going to love you as soon as they get to know you. And then we're going to kind of fill these groups up and you're going to be part of that.
I remember that.
We did that a bit out of order.
We did.
So you're coaching for the second season, right?
Yeah.
You are just now getting ready. You're in the sort of the I don't know if you've recorded stuff yet. I think you have, with Will Curb doing a podcast called Wait, what was the question?
Yep.
So we're like, and it's really interesting too, because when we had our last season of registration, we asked people like, what section do you want to join? Like my section or Moira's section or Roxie's section.
Right.
And, coming into it, people are like either me or Moira are like, who the hell's this Roxie chick? Right. Right. And it's
funny.
And then what was so interesting is how many people switched to what group they wanted to be in, just getting to meet you for a very short period of time. Mm. So, and I speak all these accolades because I want people to get to know you, right? Like genuinely know you. So let's, I could say all these nice things about you, but let's kind of dive in a little bit of who you are.
Okay. Yeah.
Before we hit record, we were sort of talking about vulnerability and like some of the things you've been exploring in your own life. Is some of the times where you kind of realize you've been, I forgot what the exact phrase was. You said like faking being vulnerable, or like what was it? It was
counterfeit vulnerability. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about, because I was just hearing how you're like exploring some of your own stuff was I just think really, really interesting in the way that you talk about it.
So when I say counterfeit vulnerability, I mean, those are the things that I do when I don't actually want to be vulnerable and feel the things. And so I was telling you that for a long time I didn't drink. And then during COVID, I'm like, hey, let's just try this out again. And I could go into the backstory on it, but I don't think it's pertinent. But what I realized was the thing that hadn't changed over the years was that I still only thought to drink when I was in a position to either choose being vulnerable or not. And so I would drink because I would feel nervous about something I was about to do. And I would feel insecure. And the thought would cross my mind like, oh, well, you could go have a beer right now. Or I would feel uncomfortable because I was having resentment that my life wasn't more fun. And instead of having a conversation with my husband about that, I would say, well, let's just have a drink or two drinks. And I say one or two. The truth is, even though I'm not like I was when I was 20 and I just drank till I puked out car windows, the truth is that one or two drinks is still work for me. I know that I don't want to have the consequences. I don't. So I don't have any, I don't want to feel terrible. I don't want to throw up on, and be passed out on a floor. But it's still work. It's still work to stop in those places. So I'm like, it's not for you. But the really interesting thing was it was always coming up in those places where I had a choice to either be brave and feel the feelings and push through, or take the easy or the counterfeit way out and not feel bad at all. Because you know what? For two drinks, I felt pretty confident.
So what was it that you were numbing in a sense?
Yeah. Where I noticed it coming up the most is where I noticed it where I needed to show up, like fully show up. So sometimes that was, I had an event and I was going to be the one like leading the event. Just so you know, I didn't do this during like coaching groups or anything.
I was like an event, like registration event.
I just realized, no. I just realized how that could sound. But it part, like I don't like going to parties. And so I don't like I don't like being in settings where I'm not comfortable, anything with other people, like social stuff. So that was some of it. And sometimes it was just in places where I knew I was going to either have to be truthful and have a hard conversation that I was nervous about having, or I could just skip it and either have a drink or go do something else instead that made me feel safer and was less of a wild card.
What has sort of led you towards getting more sort of curious about this whole process for you? Because I think that's when I think about how you approach anything that's difficult, I think that you always lead, like the lens you look through is through curiosity. That's my impression.
Well, I think part of it's that I have I have a bullshit meter for myself. I wish that I could believe my own bullshit, but I can feel it when I'm justifying. I can feel it when I'm compromising. I can feel it when I'm playing small, and I'm not always able to change it, but I'm not able to ignore it. Right. So even like back when we, well, in the beginning, even with joining ARC, I remember, and I've talked to you about this, I remember even in groups, like I would sometimes feel like I was being dumb on purpose. And I think it's great to make sure people know that they're safe. You know, like I want people to know they're safe. I don't want people to feel threatened or judged. I want to know who they are. So I want to do my part to create a safe space for that. That's what I want. But when it becomes unhealthy is when I start feeling nervous about how I'm coming across and I project and I don't want to be threatening to somebody else. And then I play dumb as a way to inauthentically create a safe space. It doesn't work, right? Because I'm not being me. And sometimes it would happen and I would be, I guess once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it.
You know, something that I've kind of witnessed you do a number of times, which I'm always very kind of in awe of it, is like, you know, we'll be having a conversation about something and you're kind of just thinking out loud and then you'll say something and then like you say it, they're like, no, that's not it. Like, I just feel like you're so like in touch with like what you are feeling while you're communicating. And you're able to really like, so you said what you thought it was and like, no, my body's not telling me that's what it is. Like, and I just think that's, to me, that's like wisdom and intuition kind of speaking, you know, sort of they're kind of dancing together. And I think that's one of the things that you do so well. It also seems like you have taken, well, let me ask you this. So in the beginning of this conversation, we were talking a little bit about, you know, you've kind of always have had this very sort of intuitive way that you show up with people, but you also, you know, I wanted you to have some training and so you got some coaching certification. What have those classes sort of taught you about like how you show up, say in group?
Well, I will say that I've learned a lot more about coaching from watching you and being part of the ARC seasons than I actually learned from going through the certification. But it had value. I'm just saying. Okay. I think that, I can tell you, I talked to you recently about something a counselor had said, and it was compassion in and of itself. It's a great thing, but it's not. Compassion by itself isn't enough. You need compassion and strength in order for people to feel safe and secure. I think that the training piece and thinking about the content of the material that we're presenting to participants and a lot of the more bones of the curriculum, that's kind of the strength piece. My heart will be in it for people. The strength piece being about knowing the material and not leaning just on the compassion piece and just the mentorship or the empathy part. It's there and I can trust that. And I can really dive into the curriculum, the ways that we communicate information, analogies, the science behind executive functioning, all of those kinds of things. So I can trust the intuition part, and I can lean into the knowledge part, and I can lean into the learning the crappy, boring details part, because all of that is going to make what I do more effective and of greater benefit. So that's what has happened by going through the training. I'm not just like winging it and leaning on just my gut. I'm also continuing to find like more information and better tools of communication and those kinds of things. So I think it's making me more well-rounded.
I want to hear some of maybe like the things that you have found to be most exciting about leading groups. Maybe some of the growth that you've seen that you just, I mean, because every season in my groups, I'm always like, I can't, like some of the growth things that people do is just, I'm just awestruck by it. And I've had close to 600 or 7, like I'm hundreds of people have gone through this, and I'm still like, I'm still always awestruck by what people are going through and the hurdles that they overcome. What I want to do first, though, is I want to take a really quick break. And when we come back, I want to get into some stories about coaching.
Okay.
So we will be right back. Support for this podcast comes from Adult Study Hall. If there are things on your to-do list that you don't really feel like doing, like cleaning the water filter or organizing your home office or starting a new project, responding to emails, or looking for that thing that you know you put somewhere but can't remember where you put it, the Adult Study Hall membership community is here for you. Our Adult Study Hall community is the ADHD-friendly co-working space you have been looking for, where you can utilize real-time accountability with other adults with ADHD who understand the struggle. Access to Adult Study Hall is only $19.99 a month. And with your membership comes access to our Adult Study Hall 24/7 room, or ASH 24/7. This is a dedicated Zoom room that is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have members who are tackling their to-do list almost every day, so you can jump in at any time, any day, and never have to work alone. But if you want more structure to get yourself motivated, your membership also gives you access to jump into our themed and guided facilitated sessions, which we call ASH Plus. You can team up against your dreaded tasks by joining our Task Busters every Thursday. Or also on Thursdays, you can join our Career Accelerator sessions if you're stuck in a job search or have been trying to figure out what to put on your resume. When it comes to clutter, it can be overwhelming, but deciding where to start can be an even higher hurdle to jump over. Find your motivation to get started when you join our clean and decluttering session every Sunday, so you don't have to take on your clutter alone. And their most recent addition to our guided sessions include a writing session hosted by our very own Barb McDonough, happening every Monday. Get access to ASH 24/7 and all of our current and upcoming ASH Plus sessions for only $19.99 a month. It really is an ADHD-friendly place where you can make progress at your own pace with a community of people who really do understand what it's like to live with ADHD just like you. You can join us by going to adultstudyhall.com and see the whole schedule of ASH Plus sessions and everything else that we have going on. That's adultstudyhall.com. And don't forget, you can check it out free for a week. That's adultstudyhall.com. Hope to work with you soon. Support for this podcast comes from the ADHD reWired coaching and accountability groups.
This group is like a secret weapon. I just feel like it's this tool in my arsenal. And I definitely, anybody that's struggling with something similar, I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is a missing link. It just helped also to know that like I have other things in my arsenal, that I have other people that I can tap into, and structures and resources and ideas. And it's just kind of shifted my mindset. I'm a believer in community and the power of community. And it like showed me, step by step, week by week, day by day, like why is it important to be in connection with people? I really think I'd forgotten that and had made it seem like, oh, this is stressful, dealing with all different types of people. And there was nothing stressful about being in community with everybody. Like it was all a positive addition.
This group to me is like, how they say it takes a village to raise a child, and I'm like a full adult. This was the village where I was like, oh, I get it. I'm sort of figuring out how to adult now, and I'm reaching the next phase of my life. And this group helps me figure out how I'm reaching it.
My therapist did not believe in this accountability group before I joined. And she was like, why do you need additional coaching when I'm here? After a month or so, she was like, I see a lot of difference psychologically, emotionally, socially. And so it came from her that joining the accountability group has really changed me as a person.
Where is the one area of your life right now that you have always wanted to gain momentum on, but have felt stuck in one place for too long? Where do you want to be at the end of 2021 so you can be ready to take on a new year? What would it mean for you if you could create a roadmap of your life and not have to create it alone? If you've been wondering what coaching can do for you, your chance for discovery is here. You can join the 26th season of ADHD reWired's coaching and accountability groups by going now to coachingrewired.com and add your name to our fall interest list. Every season, our coaching members work together to learn how to ask better questions, plan for the short term and long term with ADHD-friendly strategies. Most of all, they learn how they can harness the power of community to drive each other forward towards the things that matter most. Registration is by invitation only. If you've already submitted your name to our fall interest list, keep an eye out for your email for instructions on how you can join this week's registration event. Your chance to join our fall season is now. As of this recording, we're already 2 registration events in, with the next one coming up this Thursday, August 19th at 2 p.m. Central. So if you want to join us for the 26th season of coaching and accountability groups, go now to coachingrewired.com and add your name to our fall interest list. Our registration events do fill up quickly, so if you want to increase your chance of getting into one of the 4 sections that work best for your schedule, don't wait. We'd love to meet you at our 3rd registration event. Our ADHD can get in the way sometimes, and it can be even harder to navigate life if we're trying to do everything on our own. But when you join our intensive online coaching and accountability groups, you won't really have to navigate this alone anymore. So if you're ready to create a roadmap of your life to move closer to your goals, join us. Our coaching and accountability groups are made for people with ADHD by people with ADHD. Find out more and sign up for our next registration event this Thursday, August 19th at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern by going to coachingrewired.com. That's coachingrewired.com. We can't wait to meet you. All right, we are back. Roxie, take us into some of your coaching sessions. Maybe, do you have a particular member, obviously not using names or identifiable information, but something that really kind of stands out for you and like what you learned from what they learned?
There are so many things, and it takes so much impulse control, self-control, impulse control to not just stop sometimes in the middle of a session and just be like, that's so great. I get so excited because they have these epiphanies. And I think the thing that I get most excited about is when somebody who's been in the habit of thinking they're the problem and of beating themselves up and of just being buried under the weight of all of their own unmet potential or whatever, where they just feel like they're the problem. They could just figure it out and everybody would be happy and everything would be great. When they make that connection that they're not a problem to be solved, when they realize that they deserve to talk kindly to themselves, that they even recognize the languaging that they've been using hasn't been kind. A lot of times they come in and don't even realize what they're saying. You pointed it out to me. I didn't realize quite how negative my own self-talk was until group. So when they start to reframe without me stopping the conversation and reminding them to reframe, and they say something nice about themselves, or the first time I hear somebody who has just been so adamant that they just need to do better, find the right solution or the right app or the right whatever task manager, when they stop and go, I don't know what I need, but like I know what isn't working and I want to think it through. I want to problem solve. When they leave space to get creative, when those wheels start to turn, that's amazing to me, because the other stuff can all be handled. There's not a whole lot that can be done for somebody when they're not in that curious place yet, and when they haven't grasped the coat hem, of the self-compassion. Like that's just it's a hard place to make progress. So as soon as I see people doing that, I know that they're about to hit the snowball. I know that things are going to click. And there are so many examples just in these past 2 seasons of that happening, and that I get really excited about. I also I've also learned some practical things. I mean, people have really interesting strategies. Some of them they use and they don't use anymore, but they share them. And I'm like, well, it's good for me. I'll try it out, So I get a lot of tips and tricks.
Like what? Can you think of something?
Well, even like something as simple as this. I have a hyper scheduling worksheet that I use. And so it's just a day, 12-hour day in 15-minute increments. And when I want to get a really clear sense of what my day looks like and how much I have on it, I will list out everything in 15-minute increments. And that shows me the transitions, because I'm not just saying go brush my teeth. I'm saying get out of bed, and that takes this amount of time, and brush my teeth, it takes this amount of time, and go find my clothes, it takes this. So it's like ridiculously detailed. But I have a sheet that I use when I feel like I need to get back to basics and I need to have clarity on how I'm spending my time. So I shared my worksheet with my group, and then somebody else came in and like redid the worksheet in this really cool way and wrote everything they did or everything they anticipated and wanted to do. And then on the backside, it's what I actually did. So they have this sheet now that gives them sort of their ideal day and what their actual day looked like in the same amount of detail. And I thought that was really interesting and very cool, because a lot of people just don't tune into the details in the moments that we're in. So we can plan and think ahead in detail, but how many of us are actually paying attention to the details in the moment where it's like, I just spent 15 minutes Googling buckets when I said in Ash Plus in the chat that I was going to be working on sending an email. Like who's that present? And so I thought that was really cool and a really good idea. And that's just one example of a bunch of really cool things that people have done and that I've been able to adopt. And the best thing is that when we're working on this stuff together, it really does help me to tune into more of my own whys for doing things. And honestly, I think that I learned more about planning when I started coaching the groups, more about how you lay out the planning. Okay. By teaching the groups, because I'm like, wait, that does not make sense to me. Why doesn't that make sense to me? And I recognized what wasn't clicking, and I got more curious, and then that helped me. It helped me. I wanted to communicate something to the group, but I couldn't communicate it until I could fully grasp it. So I think it's been a really amazing spotlight on the things where I am needing to dig in deeper, get more detail, get more clarity.
And that really speaks to the whole idea of to learn is to know, but to teach is to understand.
Yeah.
Like, and I think this is why I help people learn this stuff, is because like I was like so beyond clueless with all of this stuff for the majority of my life, right? Like, I mean, there was a point where I literally did not believe I actually had the ability to be on time somewhere, like ever. Like, I didn't think it was actually something I was able to do, right? Like, I remember in my undergrad, I don't think I made it on time to a class ever, like all 5 years. Like, I was just like, and I think back to that, I'm like, oh man, that must have been so like disruptive to my professors. And like the fact that they didn't like call me out on that on a regular basis was like, wow, I owe them a debt of gratitude for their patience. But yeah, it is. It's like we have to kind of dig into this stuff. And I think part of this, and it seems like you're doing this too, is we kind of realize what are our own hurdles? What are the things that are really kind of hard for us? And then like only through really understanding it on a much deeper level are we able to then kind of connect with other people to help them kind of cross that bridge as well. And it's, I mean, you seem to be really, really comfortable with giving space, which is, I think, one of the God, it's such an important skill. And I think especially for people with ADHD, like who are coaches or maybe therapists, like giving space to let your client kind of work through something that can be really challenging. For me, like, because I know what it sort of looks like, I know the process, and I know that like letting them struggle a little bit now as they're kind of figuring this out. Like, do I want to jump in and just like give them like the 3 things that will probably help them? It's like, yeah, there's a part of me that in the moment wants to, But then I'm like, I feel, and I think that you do this as well, like that you would be robbing them of much more meaningful discoveries.
Yeah.
And I think that you've done this personally, and I think that you communicate that really, really well. Let me ask you this. So I think we all have sort of different types of people that we work super well with.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have, like, as if you think about like maybe some of the things that would describe like people who you just love working with?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like for me, like I love working with entrepreneurs. Like what's one of my favorite,
Mm-hmm.
like sort of like, I don't know, like cast types of people to work with, like people who were like doing the crazy thing of trying to make something from nothing. Right. Like I love that. What's yours?
Okay. Well, I'm actually going to ask if we can put a pin in that for 1 second, because something that you were just saying before, I wanted to address. And that was the thing that you said about making space or leaving space for people. Mm-hmm. I notice that when I am getting it really advicey, or when I'm trying to give like a 3-step plan for success, I'm usually in fear.
Say more about that.
Yeah. So I am afraid that they're not going to, or maybe they're not going to get what they need, or maybe, I don't know. It can be fear about anything, right? On the spot, I can't actually give you a lot of examples, but if I'm really quick to start giving advice, I'm afraid I'm making an assumption that they're not going to figure it out on their own. And when that happens, I have to catch myself and back up a little bit, because the truth is people will get what they need. And I don't need to be afraid that they're not. So I can keep it in my back pocket. And if they want some tips and tricks, I can offer them up. But if I'm trying to shove good advice down somebody's throat, I'm probably in some kind of fear about something.
I love your self-awareness, Roxie. It's awesome because it's helpful, right? It's not just like great to see, but it's helpful to others. I think it's one of the, like, how can we be of service to others if we have it, like, mm-hmm. if we don't have a crystal clear mirror in front of us that's understanding, like, how are we showing up?
Yeah.
And it's hard sometimes. And it's, sometimes our mirrors do get foggy. Mm-hmm. We don't always even realize it.
Well, and impatient is probably another one. So that some kind of fear, but also impatience. Sometimes if I'm doing that, I'm tired, or I'm like, I'm watching the clock, right?
Yeah.
So I have to look at how do I set myself up to be in an environment emotionally and literally physically where I have the space to offer. So that's something I have to look at too, all right. So now back to the question about, like, who are the people? I honestly, there is not a type, because I genuinely love all of the diversity so much. I would say the type I'm most intimidated by is probably, okay, I'll use a stereotype, but probably like a very stoic, nonplussed, maybe like engineering type, right? That would probably be the one that would intimidate me initially the most. And then I would want to know, how do I adapt my approach to communicate a message that can be helpful? Obviously, it's not going to be as demonstrative. I'm probably not going to use as many of my metaphors and things like that. I would probably try to practice being more direct and specific and make sure that I wasn't leaving a lot of like nuance. I would just be thinking about, be bullet point it, really literally, like bullet point it, say exactly what you mean, and lean on the, like, err on the side of gruffness over being flowery and wordy and trying to create these visuals, mm-hmm. That kind of thing.
You're meeting people where they're at versus like how you want people to be.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I want. That's why I have such a hard time. That's how come I push back when it's time to, have people go into their groups, their accountability groups and sessions. It's really hard for me to show the slide that says, who do you want on your team? Because I want all these different people who don't even know what they have to offer each other to be so safe and so comfortable that I could put any of them together and that they would find a way to work with each other and have curiosity about how the other operates, and then come away going, I had no idea that you were going to be the benefit that you were to my life. So not to say people, nobody should get a vote, but honestly, I think part of why I feel so passionate about setting it up as best I can to accommodate that is because I've been surprised a million times by people who are nothing like me that have so much to offer. I think that's what I love about ARC is it's not a cookie cutter environment.
Right.
I don't want everybody who thinks like me. I don't even want everybody who votes like me. I just want to be a part of the conversation with people who are curious and kind and open to the conversation. Like, I love that.
I love that.
Give me that all day long.
It's funny when you mentioned like the engineers are the type that most intimidate you, because there was a couple of seasons ago, we had a group that somehow we ended up with like literally 8 engineers in the group. And so now we sort of half jokingly say, we need to watch how many engineers are enrolling as like registrations going on. Or like maybe we should have a 4 engineer like limit per group. Like, because, and I know I'm totally speaking in generalities, but there is a certain like this just real logic mindset. I mean, which makes sense for the profession. Right.
Yeah.
But
awesome.
But we've also seen, and of course, there are going to be 1,000 of examples that counter indicate what I'm saying. Right.
Yes.
But like
just a stereotype.
Right. But there is a lot of like, are they going to be able to get vulnerable? Like that is a question I will have if I see someone's an engineer. Right. It's like,
yeah.
So if you're an engineer, come prove me wrong. And like.
And I think too, is like we say that and we are the stereotypes, it's a thing, but it also is really challenging because vulnerability will look really similar to certain personality types, right? Like we will recognize them in really like artistic types. I'm going to stereotype artists. But I think that we would recognize that that's what vulnerability looks like for a singer-songwriter. That's what vulnerability looks like for this, that, or the other. But when it comes to the vulnerability of someone who is more logical and less emotional, I may not know naturally what that looks like. So I get to get curious. Like, what does it look like? It's going to look different for you. And just because you're not doing kumbaya with your teammates doesn't mean you're not feeling vulnerable, but it's kind of my job to figure out what is it for you so we make sure it's happening.
And I love that because what you just said too, I think, which is like explains why like it's at sort of first glance, it's the group that you feel most intimidated by because like you don't have access to your greatest strength, your intuition to get in. Right. But then you kind of fall back on part of what is intuition's like thinking mind, and that's curiosity. Mm-hmm. Right? And I think...
Good one.
I just came up with that.
That was really good.
All right. Not bad, huh? Should we just take a break or should we cut it off there, like all overhead? Actually, let's do that. Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to just kind of explore a little bit more about like, your experience as a coach and what you hope to be able to kind of provide for potential future people who are thinking about joining these coaching groups and even those who are just exploring like growth in general. So we will be right back. Support for ADHD Rewired comes from our patrons who generously support us at ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. We want to welcome Erica at the $5 a month level, Barbara S. at the $10 a month level, Brady B. at the $25 a month level. Thank you so much for your support. If you're not sure of the ways that you can support the show through Patreon, perks for members start at just $5 a month, where you can get ad-free episodes of this show right into your favorite podcast player. At $25 a month, you can join me for a group coaching call every 4th Tuesday of the month. Our next patron-only group coaching call is on Tuesday, August 24th at 3 p.m. Central. That's 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. If you are a member at the $25 a month level and haven't joined us for one of our monthly coaching calls, what's the one thing that you can do right now to be reminded of our monthly coaching calls every 4th Tuesday of the month so you can join us for our next one? And whether you're a current patron or you're thinking of supporting the show through Patreon, I do want to know what other kinds of perks would be most helpful for you. If you are a patron, head on over to the Patreon page to give it feedback on what you would like to see. If you're not a patron, we would also like to know what would be valuable for you that would encourage you to support us through Patreon. Many of our patrons do give simply because they want to support the work that we are doing. So a huge thank you to all of our patrons who continue to show support for this show. Your support has really helped me grow my team, which means we get to keep reaching more and more people with ADHD. You can support the show at any dollar amount. Perks begin at $5 a month, where you can get ad-free episodes. And at $25 a month, you can jump into our monthly calls and get a taste of group coaching. At $10 a month, you can hear the audio recordings of those monthly calls. Truly, all of your support is appreciated. Join our Patreon community and find all the perks by going to ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. That's ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. And thanks. You've heard me say that ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community. We're also a community of podcasts. We have an entire podcast network, and I want to make sure, especially if you are new to this podcast, that you are aware of all of our other podcasts, because there really is something for everyone. For tips and really satisfying dad jokes in 20 minutes or less, check out Hacking Your ADHD with Will Curb. If you are a parent with ADHD or have a family full of ADHD fun, listen to ADHD Essentials with Brendan Mahan. For a personal audio journal sharing her personal ADHD experiences as an Asian Canadian, check out ADHD Diversified with MJ Siemens. And if you're a late diagnosed woman who is curious about how hormones affect your ADHD, then check out the ADHD Friendly Lifestyle with ADHD Rewired coach Moira Maven. But wait, there's more. Will Curb of Hacking Your ADHD and ADHD Rewired coach Roxie Martin are joining forces to launch their new show on the network called Wait, what was the question? Find all of us by going to ADHDrewired.com and click on the podcast network under the podcast tab so you can subscribe with just a click of the button and share all of our shows. And don't forget, one of the best ways you can show some love to this podcast and really all of our podcasts is by leaving ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts or any podcast player that accepts ratings and reviews. Those reviews really do help other people find our podcasts. And you can hang out with us every second Tuesday of the month at 12:30 p.m. Central for an hour of live Q&A on Zoom. To register, go to ADHDrewired.com/events. You can even register for the upcoming Q&A so you can be reminded when the next one is coming. Join us. Ask me, Brendan, Will, MJ, Moira, Roxie, and Barb your ADHD-related questions. And you might even see just how ADHD we can get to. That's what makes it fun. Go to ADHDrewired.com/events to register for every upcoming live Q&A so you don't have to miss joining us every month. A huge thank you from all of us for listening, subscribing, reviewing, and sharing all of our podcasts with the ADHD community. Thank you so much for helping us help others be seen, heard, and understood. We are so grateful for each and every one of you. Thank you. We are back. So thinking about the future, we're in the midst of your second season. We're in the midst of registration for your third season of groups. And there's a lot ahead of you. Like when we think about kind of your growth and how you want to help people grow, like what's kind of exciting for you? And what do you want people to understand about this process?
There's a lot of really good questions in there.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there.
First thing I will say is that it is...
You're getting emotional.
A little bit, sorry. I'm not sorry. It's actually sometimes scary for me when I acknowledge how much I love what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. So that's a vulnerability thing too, because part of why I've played small is just fear of showing up all the way because of not wanting to be rejected or not wanting to be in learner mode, wanting to show up with all the answers, wanting to be everything instead of be what you are and learn and grow in front of everybody. So it's a strategy, a tool to stay safe that I adopted early on. So that was a scary thing to show up. But then the next scary thing, once I did show up, was to admit how much I love doing what I'm doing. Because you admit it, and then you have to also admit, oh God, that would feel terrible if I didn't have that, or whatever. And then you just bring yourself back into the present, and you get to feel all the feelings. But there's something very scary about feeling joy. And I honestly was asking myself, a year and a half ago when my husband and I were away on a trip. No offense to my husband for what I'm about to say, but I was on this trip with him and I'm like, I don't think I've ever felt joy. Like I just had this moment, and it's not that I haven't felt great things, but joy is such an out of control experience. You can't direct it. You can't conjure it. All you can do is like let it bubble up and do its thing. And I have tried to maintain a lot of control around my own emotions. And so when I think about how much I love this, it feels scary because it's like there's something really joyful about it. And it's a little bit corny, but it's true. So that's a fact. That's something I've noticed happening a lot. I'm like, I don't think I've ever loved doing anything as much as I love doing this in terms of what I want to see, I guess, going forward. I just want to keep putting it out there. Like I just want to keep reminding people that they're not out of time and that they don't have to feel afraid of what they don't know and that they don't have to know it all. Like everything that I'm experiencing by entering into this when I had so much fear and apprehension, is kind of like what I want for them. And when they can get okay with that, then I feel like their brains can slow down to actually absorb some of the information. I think a lot, none of this stuff is rocket science. I think the way that you present it is amazing. I think the way that it themes and the way content dovetails is huge. But I think the biggest obstacle to really taking the stuff in and having it become a part of people is all the stuff in our heads. It's all the bullshit in our heads. So when we can just get realistic about our own expectations and be curious and just trust the process, then really great things happen. And there's time, like the scarcity mindset. If I don't get it all in 10 weeks, I'm fucked. Or, if I can't understand this concept as you're explaining it to me in this hour, then something's wrong with me. And now I'm freaking out. Like you're not defective. There's nothing wrong. You're going to get it when you get it. And we will still be here. We will be here when the 10 weeks are over. We will be here when 2021 is over. It's an ongoing thing. It's genuinely a community of people who are here to support and to continue growing together. That's all I want. I want to keep doing this and fostering a really healthy, vibrant community of people who are on the same path.
I love that you shared that sort of that joy and feeling sort of scared about even just like acknowledging that you love something. I was feeling that very intensely when you were describing that. How does, when we think about like all the shit we all bring to the table, like we all, it's like, I'm not going to, I apologize, Roxie, in advance for outing you on the podcast here. But you don't have all your shit together. I don't have all my shit together. Moira doesn't have all our shit. Like none of us have all of our shit together. And so it's like, I almost find it like, I don't want to say comical, but like when I'm genuinely, I don't know if you've had to do this in your groups, but like genuinely have to like set the record straight with people. Like, yeah, I'm leading these groups. I got this podcast. The business looks great, right? It's like, and life is also a shit show. And like, I'm kind of, one of the things that I have recognized because I'm often reflecting backwards from where I've came to see, as I'm thinking about where I'm trying to go. And I think about myself 10 years ago. And if I were to have like a crystal ball to look at where I'm at right now, I would be like, something's wrong with this crystal ball. This can't, no. Like, what? No. Right? I mean, that's sweet of you, crystal ball, but like, I don't think so. Like, so one of the things that I have found as I continue to grow through the years is I absolutely keep growing to my sort of level of like ineptness. And then I figure that shit out. And then I'm like, and then I continue growing. And so this has been really true over the last year or two, where I've learned to sort of, okay, this is what that feeling is. This is like, I'm playing on a new sort of terrain. I'm kind of performing at a higher level than I have before. Yeah. And it's like, oh shit, like the house of cards is going to come crumbling down. It's like, and I've learned to understand that feeling is just like, I'm doing something new right now. Mm-hmm. I'm doing something that I haven't had a ton of reps doing, and that like, and I'm going to screw shit up and I'm going to make mistakes and I'm going to continue to learn a bunch of shit because of the mistakes that I made.
Yeah.
What are you finding sort of in this realm?
That's such a good question. First of all, I am amazed at how exciting it is on the other side of the fear of blowing it. When I started my first season, I had so much anxiety. I was so scared. And everything in me felt like, because I was feeling that meant it's wrong. Like everything's wrong. I knew it wasn't. I knew it was the right time. But somehow the fact that I was feeling all that anxiety, all that fear, I'm like, oh, this is bad. This is going to go badly. And when I was able to do it anyway, I realized that it didn't last. It might happen again the next time, but I went, it was like I went through a whole process. The process at the beginning of, before I entered the tunnel was, oh shit. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to forget everything. This is going to be a disaster. My brain's just going to go blank and it's all going to go to hell. And these people are paying so much money and I'm not going to show up for them and they're not going to get what they need and all the thoughts. And then you're like, okay, great. Now turn on Zoom and start. And then we have the session. And I realized that no matter what happened in the session, there was always something really great about the time. And there was always going to be another opportunity. So if there were things that I wish that I'd done differently, or I felt like there was some content that I could have spent more time with, then I'm like, okay, I can come back and we can talk about this the next time. It just didn't have to be so finite. I could start to look at it as like, this is over the whole 10 weeks and you can bob and weave a little bit and you can be honest about things with these people. So in the first season, I felt bad, like if I couldn't figure out keynote or if I was struggling to remember to move a slide or to turn the timer on, I would get really angsty. And I realized, and I was reminded by admin and other folks, like, it's all part of it. It's okay to embrace that. It's okay to not know it all and to not have it be perfect. And when I stopped putting all that pressure on myself to be slick, I could be present. And that's been great. Not to say I don't want to continue to improve in those areas because I think that it adds to the experience and that's part of my responsibility. But you also encourage a learner mindset. You're the one who says you get to figure things out and that's in real time. And that's really beautiful because I get to find my own way. It's not like the house is like completely built and furnished and all I have to do is, walk in and sit down and then people come to visit me and I say, I know, my decorating prowess is amazing. So yeah. It's not being in my own head and being able to just be in the process like I want the people who are going through groups to do. Don't be so in your head worrying about the outcome that you miss what's right in front of you. Everything I want for them is everything I need for myself. And that's why I love this so much because it isn't just me, giving out all of the things, like I'm presenting the things that you've worked really hard to put together for these folks. That's awesome. But
it is more. It is awesome. It's been so awesome having you be a part of this and collaborating with you and you two being a sounding board for me and at times a coach for me. And you have helped me through some kind of tough periods in my life over the last year and a half or so. And so Roxie, thank you. I'm just so excited for our listeners to get to know you more and for more people to get to work with you. So we are in the midst of registration if you're listening to this as this has come out. So whether you've been thinking about joining one of our coaching groups and you want to work with me or you want to work with Roxie now that you have met Roxie, or you want to work with Moira, go to the website, go to coachingrewired.com, follow the instructions there. You'll add your email to the list. There's a little button there. And then we're going to send you stuff that tells you kind of what the next steps are. So if you don't get us this week, we have another one coming up the following week. Just go check out the website. We would love to work with you. Roxie would love to work with you. Moira would love to work with you. Mm-hmm. We're just so happy to have this community and to get to do the joyful work that we get to do together. So Roxie, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for letting me come on.
This is Eric Tivers. Thank you for listening and congratulations for making it to the end. ADHD reWired is more than just a podcast. We are a community focused on learning, growing, and connection. The website is ADHDrewired.com. You can find time-stamped summaries and additional resources for each episode. Apply to join our free and secret Facebook community. Learn more about our award-winning intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups. Join the Adult Study Hall virtual co-working membership community. Find all the other podcasts on the ADHD Rewired podcast network. Sign up for my email newsletter to get exclusive content that you won't hear anywhere else. And use the search tool to find episodes on specific topics. You can do all of this at ADHDrewired.com. While you're there, click on the Patreon button. If you are a regular listener, consider making a monthly contribution by becoming a patron. If you are able to financially support my work, it would mean a lot. This show is free to you, the listener, but it's not free to produce. Plus, patrons get cool perks like ad-free episodes and access to recordings of coaching calls, and $25 a month patrons can join me once a month for a group coaching call. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Tivers. You can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/ADHDrewired. If you're a coach, therapist, or related professional, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Eric Tivers. Subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube to see selective interviews and other videos I've made. Podcasts change lives. You can make a difference in someone's life by spreading the word about this podcast. Mention it in your online communities on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, or wherever you hang out online. And be sure to share it with your friends, family, your therapists, your coaches, doctors, siblings, parents. And if you, your coach, therapist, doctor, or ADHD support group leader would like a pack of podcast postcards to hand out, you can request those at the website, ADHDrewired.com. If you are a member of CHAD, ADA, or any other ADHD support group, please be sure to tell them about this show and all the shows on the ADHD Rewired Podcast Network. You can even show them how to download it on their phone. And if you really loved this particular episode, please hit share on your podcast player. I'm only one person, and I do count on you to help spread this message. One of the biggest things that you can do to support this podcast and help other people discover it is to leave an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts or any other app that supports reviews. And don't forget to hit subscribe so new episodes are automatically pushed to your favorite podcast app. Looking for more ways to listen and learn? Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at Audible by going to audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired. Here is my list of must-listen-to audiobooks updated July 2021. Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. Attached by Amir Levin and Rachel Heller. Atomic Habits by James Clear. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. Crucial Conversations by Carrie Patterson. The Coaching Habit by Michael Stainer. The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Rest by Alex Sujong Kim Pang. The 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins. Make It Stick. The Science of Successful Learning by Peter Brown. The Productivity Project by Chris Bailey. Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics by Dan Harris. Change Your Questions, Change Your Life by Marilee G. Adams. I always recommend to my coaches and admin that they read that book. The One Thing by Gary Keller, a required reading for all of our coaching group members. Procrastinate on Purpose by Rory Baden. The 4 Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. And if you're looking for something a little bit more magical, I have fallen in love with the Harry Potter series, and the narrator, Jim Dale, is amazing. And of course, if you haven't yet boarded the Brene Brown bus, all of her stuff is great, starting with Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, and The Power of Vulnerability. And if you're an entrepreneur or leader, be sure to check out her book, Dare to Lead. Do you have something that you would like to share? Click on the podcast tab at ADHD Rewired. Click the button to be a guest at the top of the page and schedule a 15-minute interview. This is Eric Tivers, reminding you to keep learning, growing, and connecting. Self-care is not selfish. No matter what you get done or don't get done, you are still enough. And no matter how hard it feels, we can do hard things. And we don't need to do them in the hardest way possible. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week.